The dust is settling from last night's elections. Kentucky is making national headlines after rejecting an anti-abortion constitutional amendment.
Bodie Brooks spoke with our political analyst to break down how one of the most talked about election issues spurred a lot of turnout. Bodie.
Yeah, Marvin and Amani, 52-47 ended up being the margin that decided Kentucky's constitution will not be amended to declare that there is no right to an abortion. While the future of the procedure in Kentucky is still up in the air, a lot of voters went to the polls to make their voice heard on the issue. As soon as the polls closed, the noes led through the night.
While there are still votes to be counted, the gap between the yes and no votes on the so-called question 2 is holding steady.
By Wednesday morning, the results were certain. More than 740,000 Kentuckians rejected Amendment 2, signaling a victory for pro-choice supporters and a challenge to pro-lifers.
Personal decisions like reproductive health care and abortion belong in the hands of the people affected in accordance with their own beliefs and medical advice, and not in the hands of their legislators.
We still remain very confident that there is no right to an abortion in the Kentucky Constitution, and that we, the people, through who we elect in the General Assembly, have the ability to protect unborn life in the womb.
How much do you think that the amendments perhaps fueled folks to go to the polls?
Yeah, no, I think Amendment 2 certainly fueled a lot of people to come that might not have otherwise come, on both sides.
Fox 56 political analyst Jonathan Miller says 6 months ago he would not have been certain Kentucky would have so soundly rejected the amendment. Kentucky's election chief Michael Adams says unofficially the state may have passed a 50% turnout, one of the largest in a midterm. The margins are still much closer than the dry run the nation saw in Kansas in August.
Kansas margins were much greater. I think at 20%, and here, as we're talking, it lost by around 5%. I think there's still some more votes to count, but that should be expected. Kansas is also a red state, but it's a lot less culturally conservative than Kentucky, a lot less religiously oriented than Kentucky.
Despite the strong Republican showing, Miller believes it was ultimately the independents who decided the controversial amendment.
Yes, this is a Republican state. Yes, the legislature increased its supermajority even a little bit more. But people don't want government interfering in their lives. They don't want to have extreme policies, and I think that was reflected in a vote that I think shocked the country.
Now, as for what happens next, the trigger law basically outlawing abortions in Kentucky has been stuck in court. Miller expects the state Supreme Court will likely take this vote into consideration and reject the trigger law as unconstitutional. However, in a statement, Attorney General Daniel Cameron said that his team has filed a motion for this election outcome to have no bearing on the court case. The next hearing on that case is set for November 15th. Marvin, Imani.